The funeral that changed everything. I never thought my father's funeral would feel like a business meeting, but that's exactly what it turned into. The church was filled with faces I barely recognized, distant relatives, business partners, and a few people who seemed more curious than sad. My father, Richard Langford, was a respected real estate developer in Boston, known for his sharp mind and even sharper instincts. But when he passed away suddenly from a stroke, his empire, Langford Holdings, was left dangling in uncertainty. I sat in the front pew with my mother, who looked pale and empty, clutching her handkerchief like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Behind us, whispers spread like wildfire. Everyone knew about her, Vanessa Blake, my father's mistress. She made her entrance halfway through the service, wearing oversized sunglasses and a black dress that was more runway than respectful. The audacity of it made my stomach twist. People turned to look, murmuring under their breath. Even the pastor hesitated when he noticed her. After the ceremony, Vanessa didn't shed a single tear. Instead, she moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, greeting lawyers and associates as if she already owned everything my father left behind. I overheard her say to one of them, "He promised me everything. I'll make sure his wishes are respected." That night, while my mother slept, I sat in my father's study, his scent still lingering in the air, his desk untouched. I opened his drawer and found stacks of documents, neatly labeled and organized, except for one envelope marked, "Private, for Emma only." My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a short note written in his familiar handwriting. Greater than, Emma, if anything happens to me, don't believe everything they show you. The truth, and the real will, is hidden where only you would think to look. The next morning, Vanessa showed up at our house with a lawyer and a smug smile, announcing there would be a reading of the will in 2 days. She said it like she'd already won. But as I looked at that note again, I knew one thing for certain: she might think she's taken everything, but the real fight was just beginning. 2 days later, the atmosphere inside my father's lawyer's office was thick enough to cut with a knife. The heavy oak table, the smell of old paper, and the sterile hum of the air conditioner made every second feel more suffocating. Vanessa Blake was already there when my mother and I arrived. She sat across from us in a sleek black suit, her posture straight and confident, her lips curled in a faint, knowing smile. Beside her sat her attorney, a man who looked far too comfortable for someone representing a mistress at a will reading. Mr. Harrison, my father's longtime lawyer, cleared his throat nervously. He adjusted his glasses and began reading the document in front of him. Greater than, this is the last will and testament of Richard A. Langford, dated March 4, 2024. For the first few minutes, everything sounded normal. Charitable donations, a few personal gifts, the usual legal language. But then Mr. Harrison hesitated. His voice trembled slightly as he continued. Greater than, and the remainder of my estate, including all shares of Langford Holdings, properties, and financial assets, I leave to Vanessa Blake. The room went silent. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I felt my blood run cold. Vanessa sat back with a look of quiet triumph. I told you, she said softly, turning toward me. Your father wanted me to have it. I took care of him when no one else did. I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. My father's note echoed in my head. Don't believe everything they show you. I studied Mr. Harrison's face. He looked uneasy, like he was being forced to read something he didn't quite trust. Mr. Harrison, I asked carefully, is this the only version of the will you have on record? He avoided my eyes. This is the document that was submitted to my office a week before your father passed. A week before, I repeated. And who delivered it? He hesitated. Miss Blake brought it in. She said your father wanted it filed immediately. My mother gasped again. That's impossible, she whispered. Richard could barely walk that week. He didn't leave the house. Vanessa's lawyer quickly interjected, Mrs. Langford, unless you have proof to the contrary, this will stand as legally valid. Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Emma, I know this is hard for you. But maybe your father just trusted me more than you realize. I forced a smile, though my hands were shaking beneath the table. You might be right, I said quietly. But my father was a meticulous man. He never left anything to chance. And as I said those words, I remembered something, a hidden compartment behind his bookshelf, one only he and I knew about. Vanessa thought she had taken everything. But if what I suspected was true, I still had one card left to play. That night, I waited until my mother had gone to bed before slipping quietly into my father's study. The room felt frozen in time, his old leather chair still slightly turned toward the window, his pen resting on an unfinished note, and the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air. My hands trembled as I ran my fingers along the bookshelf that lined the far wall. My father and I had spent countless hours here when I was younger. He used to hide little puzzles for me to solve, books out of order, codes in the titles, secret drawers built into the furniture. To anyone else, it was just a room. But to me, it was my father's mind turned into wood and paper. I started scanning the shelves, tugging at a few familiar books until I found the one I remembered, The Count of Monte Cristo. My father always said it was his favorite. I pulled it halfway out, and something clicked softly inside the wall. My pulse quickened. Slowly, a small panel behind the bookshelf released. I pushed it open, revealing a narrow compartment lined with dust and shadows. Inside was a metal box with my father's initials engraved on the lid, RAL. I sat down at his desk, my hands shaking as I unlocked the box with the small key that still hung from his old watch chain. The lid creaked open. Inside were several sealed envelopes, a USB drive, and a thick, folded document labeled, Final Will and Testament, signed and witnessed. My heart nearly stopped. The date on it, February 15, 2025, just 2 weeks before the fake one Vanessa had submitted. I opened the document carefully. This will was clear, detailed, and precise, exactly how my father operated. In it, he left 60% of Langford holdings to me, 30% to my mother, and the remaining 10% to a children's charity he had supported for years. Vanessa's name wasn't mentioned anywhere. I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the signature line, my father's handwriting, unmistakable. 2 witnesses had signed beneath it, his business partner, Alan Reeves, and his longtime accountant, Margaret Klein. Both were credible people who would never sign anything shady. The USB drive caught my attention next. I plugged it into my laptop, and a single video file appeared. My father's face filled the screen, pale, tired, but resolute. "Greater than, if you're watching this, Emma," he said, his voice weak but steady, "then something's gone wrong. Vanessa has been pressuring me to change my will. She says she'll handle everything, if I just trust her. But I know better. The document you found is my real will. Don't let her take what's ours." My eyes filled with tears. I sat frozen, watching my father's last words play out in the flickering light of the laptop screen. He'd known what she was planning all along. By morning, I had already made up my mind. Vanessa might have played her hand in front of everyone, but now, it was my turn. The next morning, I walked into Mr. Harrison's office with the metal box tucked under my arm. The same polished oak table that had witnessed Vanessa's smug victory 2 days ago now stood between me and justice. Mr. Harrison looked startled when he saw me. "Emma, I wasn't expecting you. Is everything all right?" I set the box on the table with a soft thud. "That depends on your definition of all right. I found something my father left for me. I think you should see it." He hesitated before opening the box, pulling out the thick folded document. The moment his eyes fell on the title, his expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. "Good Lord," he muttered, flipping through the pages. This is dated before the one Vanessa submitted, but it's properly signed and witnessed. And this handwriting, yes, this is your father's." I nodded. "There's more. Watch this." I opened my laptop and played the video. Mr. Harrison leaned in, his jaw tightening as my father's recorded message filled the room. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair, speechless. "This changes everything," he said finally. "If this will is authentic, and it certainly appears to be, then Miss Blake's document is not only invalid, it's potential evidence of fraud." Just then, the door burst open. Vanessa stormed in, heels clicking sharply against the floor. "Emma," she said coldly. "You really should stop trying to fight the inevitable. I've already started transferring the assets. It's over." I turned to her slowly, keeping my tone calm. "Actually, Vanessa, it's just beginning." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Miss Blake, it appears that Emma has produced another will, an earlier, legally binding one, supported by credible witnesses and corroborating evidence. Vanessa's smile faltered. "That's impossible," she said quickly. "Richard changed his will. He told me himself." I opened the video again and pressed play. The moment my father's face appeared on screen, Vanessa froze. His voice filled the office. "Greater than, Vanessa has been pressuring me to change my will. She says she'll handle everything if I just trust her. But I know better." Her face went pale. She took a step back, eyes darting toward the door. "That doesn't prove anything," she stammered. He must have been confused. "Mr. Harrison's voice hardened. "Confused or not, that's a direct statement contradicting your claim. I'll need to submit this immediately to probate court for review." I stood up, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "You wanted to take everything from us, Vanessa. But my father saw through you, and now, so will everyone else." She glared at me, her mask finally cracking. "You think you've won, little girl. You have no idea what you're starting." "Maybe not," I said, stepping closer, "but I do know how it ends." She stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. Mr. Harrison looked at me, both impressed and cautious. "Emma, you need to be careful. People like her don't go down quietly. She could try to destroy evidence or even manipulate others before the hearing." I nodded. "Then we make sure she can't. My father left me the truth, and I intend to use it." The next few days were chaos. By Monday morning, every news outlet in Boston was buzzing with headlines about the Langford estate. Somehow, Vanessa had gotten ahead of the story, painting herself as my father's devoted partner, the woman who stood by him when his family didn't. She had money, media contacts, and an army of lawyers. Overnight, she turned herself into a grieving widow in everything but name. I watched one of her interviews on the local news, jaw clenched as she spoke into the camera, her voice soft and trembling. "Greater than, Richard and I were planning to get married. He told me he didn't want his company falling into inexperienced hands. I'm just trying to honor what he wanted." I nearly threw the remote across the room. My mother sat beside me, shaking her head in disbelief. "She's shameless," she whispered. "How can someone lie so easily?" But the worst part came the next day. Mr. Harrison called me, his tone tight. "Emma, Vanessa's legal team just filed an injunction. They're claiming your will is a forgery." I froze. "What? She's saying you fabricated it to steal the company. They're demanding forensic analysis of the signatures and witnesses. She's even hired a private investigator to look into your motives." It was surreal. In a matter of days, Vanessa had flipped the narrative. Online forums were filled with speculation, people questioning my integrity, my relationship with my father, even whether I'd manipulated his final days. But if she wanted a fight, I was ready to give her one. I spent the rest of the day gathering everything: emails from my father, old video messages, and letters he'd written to business partners discussing his wishes. Mr. Harrison arranged a meeting with the two witnesses, Alan Reeves and Margaret Klein, both of whom immediately confirmed they'd been present when my father signed the real will. Alan, my father's longtime business partner, leaned forward across the table. "Richard told me himself that he didn't trust Vanessa. He said she was getting too involved in things that weren't her concern." Margaret nodded. "He made me scan this will myself," she added. "The one you have matches perfectly with what's in my records." It was solid proof, but I knew Vanessa wouldn't stop there. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. "Greater than unknown. You should have just taken the money and walked away." Unknown. Next time, I won't just send a warning. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I showed the message to Mr. Harrison the next morning, and he frowned. "She's getting desperate," he said. "Desperation leads to mistakes. Keep every message, every detail, we'll need it." That evening, I looked out the window of my father's study and noticed a black car parked across the street. It had been there for hours, lights off, engine idling. Vanessa wasn't just fighting for money anymore. She was fighting for survival. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about a will. It was about exposing everything my father had hidden about her, and whatever dark secret she didn't want the world to find out. By the next morning, I was done being scared. If Vanessa wanted a war, I'd give her one, and this time, I'd strike first. I started with the one person who might know more than anyone else, Alan Reeves, my father's business partner. We met at his downtown office, a glass tower overlooking the Charles River. Alan looked nervous, glancing toward the windows before speaking. Emma, he said quietly, you need to understand something. Your father didn't just change his will because of Vanessa, he was afraid of her. Afraid? I repeated. Why? Alan leaned forward. 2 weeks before he died, Richard found out that Vanessa had been moving money out of one of his development accounts, millions of dollars, into a shell company registered under a fake name. When he confronted her, she told him to stay quiet or she'd make things difficult. My blood ran cold. Are you saying she was stealing from him? Alan nodded. Yes. And worse, your father suspected she was being blackmailed by someone else. He told me he was gathering proof. Then, just days later, he had that stroke. I stared at him, trying to process it. My father's death had always felt too sudden, too convenient, but now it sounded like it might not have been natural at all. Before I could say anything, Alan slid a USB drive across the table. Richard gave this to me the day before he died. He said if anything happened, I should give it to you. I took it with trembling hands. What's on it? I don't know, he said. He just told me it would explain everything. That night, I plugged the drive into my laptop. A folder appeared titled, Project V, Confidential. Inside were hundreds of files, emails, financial transfers, even photos. My father had been investigating Vanessa for months. One email stood out, sent from Vanessa to a man named Michael Trent, a known investor with a shady reputation. Greater than, the money's ready. Once he's gone, we can finalize everything. The will is handled. I reread that line over and over, my stomach twisting. Once he's gone. My father hadn't just been betrayed, he'd been set up. I immediately called Mr. Harrison and forwarded the entire folder. This isn't just about inheritance anymore, I told him. This is evidence of fraud, embezzlement, maybe worse. The next day, Vanessa must have realized the walls were closing in. She showed up at my father's office, demanding files, threatening staff, even shouting at the building manager. One of the employees recorded the whole thing on their phone. When I saw the video online later that night, I knew she was unraveling. The woman who once looked untouchable was now cracking in public. But I also knew what desperation could drive someone like her to do. That same night, my apartment door handle rattled, slowly, deliberately. I froze. When I peered through the peephole, I saw nothing but the shadow of a figure walking away down the hall. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, whoever it was had vanished. Vanessa was cornered, and a cornered predator is the most dangerous kind of all. The day before the hearing, I barely slept. Every sound outside my apartment made me jump. The black car had returned the night before. It sat across the street again, engine running, headlights off. I called the police once more, but by the time they arrived, it was gone. Mr. Harrison called early that morning. The court hearing is set for 9 a.m. tomorrow, he said. With the evidence from Alan's USB and your father's video, we have a strong case. But, Emma, he hesitated, you need to stay alert. Vanessa's lawyers filed another motion overnight. This time, they're claiming you coerced your father's video under duress. I almost laughed in disbelief. She'll twist anything to survive. Exactly, he said. Just don't underestimate her. By afternoon, I went to meet Margaret Klein, my father's accountant, to collect one final document, the original audit trail showing Vanessa's missing money. We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown, but when I got there, Margaret never showed. After 20 minutes of waiting, I called her phone. No answer. I texted twice. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number again. Greater than unknown. You should have stopped digging. I froze. My chest tightened as I looked around the cafe, scanning faces, trying to spot anyone watching me. But everyone looked normal. Too normal. I left immediately and went straight to Mr. Harrison's office, shaken but determined. She's trying to scare me off, I said, handing him my phone. But I'm not backing down. He nodded grimly. Good. Because tomorrow, everything comes to light. That night, I double-checked the files on the USB, printed multiple copies, and even uploaded everything to a secure drive. I knew if anything happened, the truth couldn't disappear. At around midnight, I heard something outside, soft footsteps near my door. My breath caught. I grabbed my phone and crept closer. The sound stopped.